Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever in the world you are. Welcome to this program. Tonight I've got Benjamin again, and he's going to help us have this discussion. We are going to start this news review with a video done by Violet Gonda. I think she raises a number of really key points in this video, which I would like to pick up and follow up on and draw the viewers' attention to. Let's just listen to the video first.
And I only have 2 hours to pay.
The fee for registering as a presidential candidate is not a decision to be taken lightly. And yet, there are 11 candidates who have thrown their hats into the ring. The winner and run-up from the 2018 elections, President Emmerson Mnangagwa and opposition CCC leader Nelson Chamisa, were obvious contenders. 4 of the candidates for 2023 stood for president in 2018 and between them garnered less than 1% of the vote. After the elections, they became part of the Political Actors Dialogue, or POLAD, established by President Emmerson Mnangagwa. As a member of POLAD, they received vehicles and junkets from Mnangagwa, and they may think that investing $20,000 to receive a $40,000 vehicle plus the other perks is a good investment. The newcomers in the presidential race are Mr. Trust Chikora of ZCPD, Mr. Wilbert Mbaiwa of NPC, Mr. Gwinyai Henry Muzorewa of UANC, Douglas Monzora of MDC, and Mr. Xavier Kasukuwere, an independent candidate. Kasukuwere has outstanding warrants for arrest, so whether he can even enter the country to campaign is in doubt. And amongst many opposition supporters, Monzora is seen as too close to the ruling ZANU-PF, so his chances of garnering any substantial votes is highly unlikely. So, the presidential competition is effectively a two-horse race between Emmerson Mnangagwa and Nelson Chamisa. In 2018, they received 51.4% and 45% of the vote, respectively. It is no secret that President Mnangagwa has unlimited funds at his disposal, plus a partisan electoral commission, police, secret service, and judiciary in his campaign arsenal.
So we are going to assess the situation and give the
So how does Chamisa think he can reverse the results of the 2018 elections?
Our campaign is going to be basically a presidential. Our focus is not to be in parliament, but to be in government. We have been in parliament for a long time. That's not our station of choice at the moment. Our station of choice is government.
But how you get into government without winning parliament is an issue he does not address.
Your will must be done.
He has also made it clear that God is the key part of his campaign arsenal. Given the odds facing his candidacy and the earthly obstacles his supporters face, appealing to a higher power might be the only viable option.
And I'm still short about 3,000 US, and I only have 2 hours to pay.
The fee for registering as a presidential candidate.
Sorry, there we are. I had missed the beginning of it, so that's why I thought I would play it. Benjamin, what's your take on that one?
Thank you very much. Good evening, good morning, viewers, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us. It's very interesting to see. First of all, I think Linda Masariro was part of the one of the candidates the last time around, and now with the coming up of the fees that needs to be paid up front before you put your name for presidential candidate. She seems as if she didn't manage to get the 3,000 at the end of the day. So sorry to her. Uh, it's there's a lot of
Well,
questions that
20,000, I must admit, is a fortune.
yes,
And,
given
and,
in
and,
Zimbabwe,
and, and
it's very steep.
oh, yes. And it's not to be taken lightly. And this is 20,000 US dollars, not Zimbabwe dollars.
Yes, so I think
So
it
I
deterred.
think that put actually a ceiling on the number of people who were able to throw their hat in. I think if it had not been for that, my belief is that there would have been a hell lot more.
Yes, given that Pollard was on offer, I
Exactly.
believe so. Who wouldn't want to?
I mean, like Violet correctly pointed out there, if you spent the 20,000 and even failed to win, the four candidates who participated last time and are in Poland, between the four of them, they failed to win even 1%. But they all got the US 20,000, 40,000 truck and a lot of other perks as well. So I
Yes.
think she was right. It's a good investment. You spend
Oh yes.
20,000 and you get as a reward 40,000 worth of vehicle plus other benefits. That's a
You'd
good
have doubled
return.
your money. It makes very good economics.
Exactly. Double your money. And yeah, so uh, and I think it is important to remind the listeners there that to be member of Poland, you had to admit that the election was free, fair, and credible, and Mnangagwa was the legitimate winner. That is the condition.
Oh yes, I remember. That was those were the exact words that they used, that you must acknowledge. That was the most important thing, the acknowledgement part, to say he won free and fair, so that it sends a picture that there was democracy in Zimbabwe, and whoever lost admits that they lost to the better man. Basically.
Absolute. The process was free, fair, and credible. I mean, you can't have a more credible electoral process than this. So that was one of the conditions. Any other thing that you have picked up on that video?
Yes, I managed to pick up the fact where where you look at the conditions that are there before you get to the election. Like how Violet says that the amount of arsenal that President Mnangagwa has at his disposal right now, as compared to his other uh, challenges, let's say, is just above and beyond. I don't think they have got that reach to get to where he is, because I mean, once you have the referee, which is Zek, in your corner, then when you feel tired, you just simply tell him to ring the bell, then just get some rest. So the odds already are stacked against them, and now we know just recently the judges, they got cushioned very very well before the whole election process, that such that even if there was to be a dispute after the election, I mean, Just like the same guys that are investing in Poland, why would these guys not invest themselves in the same operation?
Exactly. Sorry. Yeah,
I don't
I
know
mean, I think
how.
in terms of resources, there's no doubt that ZANU PF has got unlimited resources, and in terms of expenditure, ZANU PF is has got the money, the resources to spend as they wish. But one of the things that I found that Violet raised in your video there was the issue, which I think maybe most people may forget, is that Chamisa is putting so much emphasis on the presidential, and it's forgetting the issue of he needs to win MPs. In 2018, ZANU PF had more than two-thirds majority in parliament and in the Senate. And although Nelson Chamisa disputed the presidential, maybe disputed one or two of the parliamentary ones, but otherwise he accepted the parliamentary result as correct. One is going to ask, how is he going to govern if the same result was to be repeated this year? When he has got two-thirds majority in parliament of ZANU PF, two-thirds majority in the Senate, ZANU PF, and he has got only a third of his own MPs. I think that is an important point. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right there. It becomes ungovernable. But then let's look at the way ZEC has also gone a step further with the delimitation that they have since just done. They have stacked the odds even far much worse. They have increased number of constituencies within outside. We know that Triple C stronghold is in the towns, like as they say, as the survey says. And right now they have just shrunk those, and they have expanded in the rural areas. So now to think that you couldn't get majority in parliament when the odds were a little bit better, you can just try and imagine now when things have just gotten worse for him. So it's, even if he was to get into power, I believe it will be just a circus in parliament. There won't be any much movement to progress. Whatever you suggest could just be easily thwarted.
I mean, in this particular case, people we've got to remember this is a dysfunctional political system where the president holds so much power and has got so much influence over, and ZANU PF has been in power for now the last 43 years. So even the civil service, the army, and all the other institutions are all pegged with ZANU PF loyalists. And so therefore, then for the opposition to come into power with a two-thirds majority in parliament, ZANU PF, and in the Senate, the same thing, and then a completely ZANU PF loyal civil service, police, army, and so forth. It clearly shows this is going to be even harder. I mean, particularly in this case, when you're looking at the election campaign that Chamisa and his friends should be doing, should not just be concentrating on Chamisa alone. He should also be concentrating on winning seats in parliament. Whereas from the campaign alone and the coverage, it looks like he is all the resources of Triple C are channeled towards Chamisa winning. And there seem to be very little, or from last time it appears that there was very little campaigning to win parliamentary seats. And I think this is a serious problem that one has got to ask whether Chamisa is really being serious about the IA government in waiting. Or as he puts it in this video, our destiny of choice is government, not parliament. We've been there a long time. So, you're not really putting any resources in winning members of parliament, winning seats in parliament. You want to win the presidency, then you'll have the opportunity to form the government. As if you are talking of the US, where the whoever wins the presidency will form the government, and even if it turns out that he has got minority in the House of Representatives and the Senate. I think that is a tragedy here.
If I may just add a quick word. One thing to note about this whole issue with him having less in parliament, because let's look at it recently. Just the news that came out that they got given the voters roll, and they had a lot of issues whilst they were meeting up with Zek to discuss about the whole voters roll. And it looks as if the whole choosing of MPs on the Triple C side was, I think it could have been done hurriedly, or they did not give it enough time. Now they have the issue of double candidates that are registered, now getting each other arrested to say you went fraudulently and this one did this. I don't think they did give it enough time to say, okay, gentlemen, who wants to go, or maybe they would have gone through their own by-elections and how their process they used and all that. So you kind of find out this is why they are in there. It's like a circus within the camp, they themselves, Triple C, as to who's going to be their own member of parliament that is representing which constituency, and how that choice became about. And there's so many questions that are already showing up that shows, probably like you were saying, they are mainly focused on Chamisa getting into presidency than the whole of the smaller components of the election, which for me I think is very wrong. You can be a president, but then if you don't have parliament in a place like Zimbabwe, I don't know what you will be there. Then for sure you will be a puppet, because there's nothing you can do. People will just crush you every time when you want to make, or you bring forth a decision.
Yeah. Well, the other item that I wanted us to comment on is this. There's been a recent survey done by, let me get the name right, the Mass Public Opinion Institution released their Afrobarometer survey on Zimbabwe on the 10th of July, in which they were giving Mnangagwa a lead over Chamisa in terms of the forthcoming elections. And what is interesting about it is that this lead is really, I mean, well, okay, it's not that significant. I think they were giving Chamisa Mnangagwa something like 37%, and Chamisa 10 points behind at 27%. But what is important to me about that survey is the fact that that a lot of people are putting in attention to it. I don't see how you can meaningfully, professionally, do a poll survey in a country where you know elections are not free, fair, and credible. How did they come up with that figure? Or how can that figure have any meaning when you know, for instance, that a lot of the voters in the rural areas are going to be frog marched to attend ZANU-PF rallies, and then come election day, voting day, they'll be frog marched to go and vote for ZANU-PF. How do you put that in your computation? Everybody of any substance at all will tell you 2018 elections were rigged. And there's not been even a token democratic reform implemented since then, which would point to the fact that the 2023 elections are going to be rigged too. So how do you do a survey here, Benj?
I think it's just opinion, because when you actually do read the article, you don't know what the sample size was, how they came up with the candidates to ask, and all that. And like you say rightfully, that it's pointless to have a survey. You cannot have a survey or conduct any research when we know that the participants are 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 compromised to follow a certain individual, or let's say the answers are pre-programmed already. It doesn't make any sense. So for me, I think it's just a waste of time, really, in conducting such a survey, because the environment in Zimbabwe right now is not conducive to even bother to even do any election whatsoever. Whoever seems to want to do it is just doing it to try and, like as we say, there's Pollard there, which offers maybe another 40,000 and and more goodies. And I don't know, for Triple C, maybe it's, well, they're not really worried about Parliament, as they say, but I think in Parliament that is where they have their biggest stake, because when it comes to presidential election, ZANU-PF has ZEC on the side, so I don't see the purpose of it anyway. Even could be even more than 61% for Emerson Mnangagwa, because I mean he's got all the odds in his favor.
Well, I think it's just what worries me, or what was disappointing to me anyway, is the amount of attention that the survey was given. This Afrobarometer result was given. how anyone can meaningfully attach any meaning to that survey without acknowledging that Zimbabwe's elections are not free, fair, and credible. It beggars belief, you know. Surely you cannot treat Zimbabwe as if you're the same way you treat a country like the UK, you know, where you know the people whom you are serving, they know the election is free, fair, and credible, and they are free to speak their express their opinion. You know, in this particular case, we don't even have something as basic as a verified voters roll, and therefore, then we don't know who is going to vote. You know, and today I was speaking to, in fact, there was an article the other day by Tim Pachedu, who also noted the same thing, that although ZEC has supposedly stopped registering new voters as of the 2nd of June, they've since the nomination day added on something like 21,000 additional new voters, which would suggest that they've continued to register voters, although the exercise is supposed to have stopped. And in this particular case, as long as you do not have a verified voters roll, you never know who is voting. You know, and come voting day, there was a report the other day saying that ZEC has finally given a copy of the voters roll to Triple C. And from what I've heard, the copy of the voters roll that they were given is a hard copy, not an electronic one, which they can search. And number two, it's a nationwide instead of it being a constituency one. And more specifically, a polling station, because at the end of the day, the voters' roll that is going to be used on the day of voting will be a polling station-based voters' roll. And the interesting thing about it is that ZANU-PF candidates have got the full voters' roll, because they even have mobile phone numbers of the voters. At one point, when they were part of their campaign, they sent text messages to all the voters to vote for ZANU-PF. I think it was during one of the by-elections. And you say to yourself, where did you get the mobile phone? Unless ZEC gave it to you, which in this case they would have done. And yet the opposition is denied the same privilege. So, like you were also referring to there, that you've got ZEC on the ZANU-PF side. How you can possibly win these elections is beggars belief. And so, for somebody to come up with a survey saying, "Oh, this is a survey and it to be valid," when you have got a process that is so flawed that you know this election is not free, fair, and credible, one really has got to question, you know, the professionalism of the organization behind it.
Yes, and that's very true. I mean, it's pointless to conduct a survey when the environment is like that. But then, at the end of the day, you know, like I was not even aware that Triple C got a hard copy. It just makes life even more difficult for this guy. I don't really know why they are. You know, like I mean, there's 11 guys that are trying this whole presidential yeah, election. It just amazes that why would they be doing something like that, especially when they know that you know there is absolutely nothing they can do because the environment is so flawed. is so stacked against them that it's more of playing a game of uh, snakes and ladders with somebody who's got a loaded dice. Every time is just a six. Every time is just a six. It, it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't make any sense for me.
Yeah. Well, this is actually the um, okay. Sorry, you can continue. Let me just adjust this while you talk.
Okay. I was saying it's like as you the good thing about this whole thing is that they are they are these elections, as we go through these elections, they are being monitored, they're being observed. Let's say they don't want us to use the word monitored. They are being observed and everything is being taken down, and at the end of the day, this is what is going to be used as to measure whether Zimbabwe is ready to be reinstated in the Commonwealth, for to see the progress going forward, to say have we changed or have we amended our ways in the way we conduct our elections, in the way we conduct our business, in the way we conduct human rights. This is the survey that needs to be taken, not this to see who is going to beat who. This is not like like how the Americans, like the US, how they conduct their polls to know, because that's how it's different from how we do. Nobody forces anybody. So it's a free poll, it's a free survey, not this one where it's already predetermined. It doesn't make any sense for me at all.
Well, what we are seeing there is actually the hard copy of the voters' roll that Triple C is supposed to have received. They may have received the electronic copy as well, but that is part of the hard copy that they received. And that hard copy is not searchable, so you cannot really search in it, and it is not a constituency based or much less a ward based. It's a nationwide, from what I found, what I was told, and therefore then that is not the hard copy that they are going to use for the election. So they could give you one copy, and then the copy that's going to be used on the day of voting itself totally different, and you'll be none the wiser. So I think it is most unfortunate that we've struggled to uh, get over this simple thing, like let's get a verified voters roll. The law actually is very explicit on that. A verified voters roll should be produced at least one calendar month before nomination day. And in Zimbabwe's history, since independence 1980, we have never produced a verified voters roll. Never. And this copy that people are saying, circulating, that they've got now this hard copy and then they've got the electronic one. Those ones, if it's electronic, it's nationwide. And it doesn't uh, um, give you the details of each voter and which constituency and which ward, which polling station they are. And therefore, then that could not possibly be the same one that is going to be used on the day of voting.
Uh, And what
So,
is worse is with this verified, with the so-called verified voters role that they have. I don't think it's verified. It went through a verification process, and then they found out there were anomalies in it, and then they closed the book. So basically, we're just using the same, because nobody can just come and just tell you that, no, we rectified everything that was wrong. How would you know? Are you honestly telling me that Triple C in their hearts or in their minds, they actually believe that Zek went and fixed all the anomalies just like that? I mean, some things,
Well, the
they just
verification
must
that
go.
you're talking about was a week where people were asked to go and check the voters' roll, and you were only going to check for your own details. You couldn't check for somebody else. So it was more an inspection than a verification, you know. And if you found your name was not there, then ZEC said they were going to correct it. I don't know whether that meant you re-registered. In some cases, if your name was not there, it could have been in the voters' roll, but in another polling station, in another ward, in another constituency. How would you know? So a proper verification really should be done by a proper auditing of the voters' roll, which has never been done. And whenever people have managed to get some copies and done an analysis like Tim Pacheco did, that's when they found a lot of people, their names had been moved from one ward to another ward, from one constituency sometimes to another constituency, and sometimes were deleted without the individual even knowing about it or being informed about it, which is totally unacceptable, because ZEC is not supposed to change any of your details without you, the individual, knowing about it. The only time they are allowed to delete your name is, for instance, if they get details from registrar office, for instance, of the details of people who passed away, then they would want to update their voters roll by making sure that those people's names are deleted off the voters roll. That sort of thing. That is the update they should be doing. But in this particular case, they don't necessarily do it, because it has been known that many people who have died 10 years ago, their name is still on the voters roll. So again, this is the chaos of the political situation in Zimbabwe. It is absolutely unbelievable that we are going through an election process 43 years after independence, and we still are failing to produce something as basic as a verified voters roll. Don't know whether you want to say your closing remarks there, Mr. Benjamin.
Yeah, I think we have said more, as much as we can, given the fact. The only thing is, I've always maintained people should learn to think for themselves and see at the evidence and the facts that are presented before them before they make any decision as to whether they want to continue with voting, who they want to vote for, or they have decided just to sit back. The decision always lies within everybody. Everybody has got their own decision, their own right to make a choice. But let's use our brains to think and not somebody else to persuade us into doing something that they think is right. Thank you.
Well, on that note, I would add myself that I think it's a question of, when you know, as we do now, know that this process is flawed, and when we know that by participating, you're only giving legitimacy to the vote rigging ZANU-PF, it really doesn't make any sense to keep on participating. So it is imperative that people should stop participating and give the process legitimacy. And it's even more than that. Whether you participate actively or you're not so active, or you participate by saying nothing at all, you don't comment and condemn the process, it is assumed in law that you must have given your consent. So if you're going to object to the process, you need to speak and speak out loud and clearly. And for you to say nothing and then complain after the voting is done and ZANU-PF is declared the winner, it's too late. That point I must emphasize again and again. Those who say nothing, they are giving their approval to the system. Saying nothing is no longer an option here. You need to condemn the process because you know it's flawed. You need to condemn it and make sure that everybody knows that this process is flawed. And in this case, I'll go even further and say you also need to condemn the opposition for participating in an election which they themselves admit they know is flawed. They know by participating they're giving ZANU-PF legitimacy. But they also admit that they are participating out of greed because they are after the few seats ZANU-PF is offering. And for those in the presidential race, as we discussed earlier on, they are participating because they are also after the benefits of being in Poland. Those opposition have lost political credibility. And we, the ordinary Zimbabweans, have got to say it and say it out loud so that at the end of the day, the pressure has got to be piled on SADC not to endorse this electoral process and grant ZANU-PF legitimacy. That would be a tragedy for Zimbabwe. Thank you very much, Benjamin, for joining tonight. And to everybody, all the listeners there, thank you very much for listening and good night.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good night, viewers and listeners.